There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the Media Mothership.
All right, welcome to Edge Radio 99.3 FM. This indeed is Media Mothership here on your wavelengths. And as always, I'm your host, Dr. Craig. And we're streaming on edgeradio.org.au as well as YouTube and Twitch. Please check us out there. And if you want to leave a chat, you can do that on YouTube or Twitch, or SMS us directly in the studio on 04 888 11707. We're broadcasting out of Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania. And I'm your host, Dr. Craig. All right. So on today's show, I want to set it up by playing, a little bit that was in the intro of today's theme song to see if you can guess the news topic for today's discussion. Here it is, here again. To play out. Yes, the memorable tunes of Popeye the Sailor Man. The fondly remembered 1930s, 20s, late 20s, early 20s, mid 20s. Well, it turns out that the Popeye license is about to enter the public domain, interestingly. And with that, of course, is the excitement of what might come about with Popeye entering the public domain. Fascinatingly, it seems that there will be a horror movie set up around it. Indeed, much in the vein of the horror movie we had for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. There will be a horror film of Popeye as its license now enters the public domain. As we know, after a lengthy period of time, these properties eventually make their way into the public domain, which means that one can use them without having to pay royalties or negotiate with the estate to incorporate them in some way into the text they're creating. What's intriguing here, of course, is the trend which has emerged around, fondly remembered fan favorites like Winnie the Pooh and the original version of Mickey Mouse being turned into horror films. In 2002, we had the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey film. The following year, we had the version of Mickey Mouse via Steamboat Willie, which entered public domain last year in the horror film The Mousetrap. It had to change some aspects to ensure that it was not in breach of copyright, Disney's copyright of Mickey Mouse. It had to change the name from Mickey's Mousetrap to just The Mousetrap. But the character is basically based on that original 1920-ish version of Steamboat Willie. And now, of course, we have this. So I'll play you it's a very tongue-in-cheek type trailer that's been made for the film, creatively referred to or titled Shiver Me Timbers, which is one of Popeye's slogans. That and I am what I am. Shiver Me Timbers is certainly a memorable catchphrase up there with his spinach eating. Okay, so I'll cue it up. Hold on. Here we go.
There's films that inspire, films that will move you to tears. This is not one of those films. This film's got blood. This film's got guts.
You sure you ain't smoking that shit?
They're smoking that shit. This film's got meteors.
Meteors! Don't touch it! They're evil!
This film's got sex.
Give me some sugar, baby.
This film's got drugs. And rock and roll.
That was close.
I'm telling you, when you're gone, you're gone.
Shiver Me Timbers, coming soon.
So that's the trailer for the 2025 film Shiver Me Timbers, based, of course, on the property Popeye the Sailor Man, turned into a horror film now because it's entering public domain in 2025. Some of the comments under the YouTube are hilarious. The one by, hold on, let me bring them back. There's a hilarious one here by user Jonathan Kelly 5117 saying, this is the kind of garbage that makes the horror genre as a whole lose credibility. I'm usually not critical of a trailer, but I'm sick of the entered the public domain horror trend. Uncreative, cash grab, IMO, just like the rest. Enough already in full caps. That's from Jonathan Kelly 5117. Clearly unhappy. Another one posting, there will be dozens of low-budget B-roll movies adapting public domain IP. What a hot mess, lol. That's from F. Castro, WM5YV. Then we have Unforgettable, Robin Williams and Shelley Duvall. Of course, the intriguing Altman film on Popeye the Sailor Man in the, what was it, late 70s, early 80s. They came out, starring Robin Williams. A lot of WTF comments. WTF next movie someone's pitching here in the comments is Mary Poppins Nasty Nanny. We'll see that happens when Mary Poppins enter public domain. So a lot of kind of negative reaction under the clip on YouTube. If we have a look, though, at the plot, so the film's synopsis, as defined by a reviewer called Joe Blow, lists it as olive oil, so the character's name from the original series. Olive Oil, her brother Castor, and friends go on a camping trip to see the meteor shower with Halley's Comet. But the night turns into horror as a meteor transforms Popeye into an unstoppable killing machine. With thrilling 80s slasher references and comedic twists, the film combines elements of horror and comedy in a fresh take on both genres. Shiver Me Timbers plays tribute to classic slasher films while delivering hilarious moments, shocking scares, and nostalgic nods that will delight both horror and Popeye fans alike. So intriguing, they're going via 80s horror, so I guess they're covering their bases with a lot of generations, your baby boomer Popeye fans, if there are any, and your 80s Gen X slasher film fans. So it's an intriguing Venn diagram the Cracked article points out that's analyzing this, saying, the horror fans and the Popeye fans, whether or not there will be a middle space they both meet to watch this film in. It is a cautionary tale, though. In coming years, so next year we've got Popeye. The year after that, in 2026, we've got Mickey's dog Pluto. Then in 28, we've got Goofy going to public domain. Donald Duck goes into public domain in 2030. Porky Pig, 2031. And Daffy Duck, 2033. So I'm guessing those properties are potentially all up for grabs to be turned into a horror film. Dick Tracy's coming up into public domain 2027. So it'll be fascinating to see how those childhood memories get reappropriated into bizarre looking horror. It should be quite intriguing. All right. Ooh. Okay, moving on now. Let's have a look at... while we're on that topic, actually, there's a couple of articles. Because what is it? January 1st, at the start of the year, first day of the year, in the US, the copyright extension term ends, and new material comes back into the public domain. And that happens on the 1st of January every year. If you're up for that copyright duration expiring. So there are a number of works in 2025 entering public domain. So we'll list them now. And again, the importance of this, these are US titles. The importance of this, of course, is that it explains why we're getting these bizarre horror films with Winnie the Pooh and Mickey Mouse, or versions of those characters from their initial conception. Because once they enter public domain, creators are no longer needing to get permissions from the family estate of the creator, or if they're already tied up in a corporate deal, basically not being able to use it at all without paying a small fortune. So you're free from that. Once it enters the public domain, you're able to incorporate and use it as you wish, but it has to only be that version. So for example, the Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse came last year, but this is the black and white version with a number of kind of recognizable brand motifs missing. So the eyes are much different. They're much small black dots. I don't think there's suspenders on this version, and it's black and white. You can't do a color version. You can't do the version of Mickey Mouse we know today. You're stuck with the version that was in that initial Steamboat Willie film. So coming up, we have another Mickey Mouse film entering the public domain. This is the sound version of The Carnival Kid with K, where Mickey speaks his first words. So I guess those first words in that voice are now in the public domain to sample in a music piece, maybe. We've got a number of books entering the public domain, so these should now become super cheap. A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Got a couple of films coming into public domain. The Broadway Melody, which won an Academy Award for Best Picture. That'll be intriguing to watch. Broadway Melody. Welcome Danger, Harold Lloyd's first sound film. On with the Show, the first sound film in colour. Black Male, Alfred Hitchcock's first sound film, is entering public domain next year. Black Male. The novel, or the English version of the novel All Quiet on the Western Front, the book set in World War I from the German point of view towards the end, that's entering public domain. And William Faulkner's novel The Sound and Fury are also entering public domain. These are only versions that were published in 1929. So these are all texts, movies, songs that released in 1929 that are now expiring in 2025. So if there's a version of The Sound and Fury or Farewell to Arms or the Mickey Mouse cartoon released after that date, that's still in copyright. So intriguing, though. There might be some interesting little versions of All Quiet in the Western Front coming up now that it's no longer having to be paid for to use. So 1st of January, we'll unleash the creative horror film versions of these texts. All right, so that's the interesting news that's out there in the media, the upcoming public domain interest, and the fact that now we have the Popeye film, Shiver Me Timbers, the horror version of Popeye, coming out in 2025 to celebrate this excitement. Very bizarre. I want to change pace slightly and do a little discussion of video games now. One of the things that always interested me about video games is the journalism surrounding it, the analysis, rating of video games. What's interesting about video game discussion was a type of journalism that developed and grew in popularity in the early 2000s that was referred to as new games journalism. And it's a style of video game journalism that emphasizes the writer's personal experiences and emotional response to a game over just explaining its, its graphics quality, its gameplay dimension. I mean, those aspects will be in it, but there's a kind of introspectiveness to it. Some of my favorite new games journalism pieces, there was a great one that discusses a flight simulator, one of Microsoft flight simulators. And the games journalist set himself the challenge in the review to actually attempt to play the game under the conditions of the pilot that would be doing it. And he chose one of the early, 1920s transatlantic flights, or 1930s transatlantic flights, right? One of those first attempts, the kind of Lindbergh attempts or successful attempts to go through the transatlantic from America to France under those conditions. So he sat there in his seat. He packed much food around him and had to play the game, the flight simulator, under the conditions of if you were flying this 1930s plane, however many hours, 24 hours. And that was his review, unpacking that experience in the simulator game. So again, these ones where it's also kind of an emotional journey that it's taken on. So there's a subjectivity within it. There's a type of narrative style in these video game reviews, which I really enjoy reading. There's a storytelling technique which engages the reader, like that challenge where he sets up with the, Act 1 of the review of the Microsoft Flight Simulator was the insanity of trying to do a transatlantic flight under 1930s flight conditions at home in your room, not leaving your seats, or only being able to leave the seat as it would be able to be done in that cockpit of that plane in the 1930s. So can you endure it? And is that the ultimate form of simulation, right? That you're also inhabiting an idea of that experience. And there's some quite amusing player perspective which can come into play. What I want to do to kind of unpack this is listen to an audio version of one of my favorite video game reviews in the new game journalism style. This was a famous piece, or has gone on to become a famous piece in new games journalism by Ian Shanahan. And I'm a little hesitant in some ways because the title contains an offensive word. It's the title of the review is Bow N-Word, and it's his review of the Star Wars game Jedi Outcast. What's interesting about the Star Wars game Jedi Outcast is that it's an MMO game, so it's a massive multiplayer type game, and it's one in which he's talking about his experiences reviewing the game. Like, so he's need to provide this game review for PC Gamer UK back in 2004 when this came out. And he's talking about it in terms of this video game, Jedi Outcast, where basically you're playing as a Jedi character with a lightsaber, and his experience of playing it in this multiplayer way. We'll have, actually, before I go into the audio version of it, here's the trailer for Star Wars Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast, for the Nintendo Switch. And again, it will give you a sense.
I'm no Jedi. I'm just a guy with a lightsaber and a few questions.
Yeah, to give you a sense of what this game's about. You know, a lot of lightsaber battles, those sound effects of, you know, as it says in the trailer, you get to wield some force powers. You're battling other Jedis with their lightsabers, and that's the kind of style. So it's all third-person view, and you're controlling your Jedi character as it's fighting other wielders of lightsabers. So it's third-person kind of combat game where you're doing flips and you're using your lightsaber to hack and slash. So Ian Shanahan's reviewing this, and he's recounting his, you know, this particularly provocative experience he had in the game Jedi Outcast. Now, it's important to frame this. The audiobook version of this includes the N-word, so again, it's important to contextualize why that title's there. You know, the context of this racial slur is that his gamer tag is always black, and the significance of that is picked up by someone he's fighting with, and then he unpacks the kind of racial slur which is said to him in terms of the meta-ness, the game character he's playing, as well as how he physically feels towards it. So if you are sensitive, though, to terms like this, it's please do kind of tune out for the first 2-3 minutes and then tune back in. But I think it's worth, for the analysis that he's providing of this game and his first-hand experiences of receiving racial vilification, to discuss and see it as a kind of critical dimension. Of course, on this show, we always encourage respectful language, and on the chat, I'm assuming everyone will remain respectful and use inclusive language to discuss sensitive topics such as this. So what we'll have a listen to now is Ian Always Black Shanahan's review of Jedi Outcast. We'll listen to the first few minutes, then we'll discuss a little bit about why it's such an interesting way to do video game discussion. The start of this will set up, again, an explanation of its significance and why it matters, and then it goes into an audio version of the 2004 video game review for Jedi Outcast that appeared in PC Gamer UK.
Alex Hyde-White. What you are about to read or hear is, in a way, what defined it all. Bow Nigger is a key text in the canon of what is now known as new games journalism. It was also one of the earliest pieces to grapple with how digital identity is expressed in multiplayer games. It is widely seen as one of the most influential pieces of game criticism ever. Bow nigger, he typed. I kind of hunched uncomfortably over the keyboard at that point. Not that I should have taken offense, really. For one thing, my screen name has nothing to do with my ethnicity. For another, it's only a game, and the fascist doing the typing is probably hundreds of miles away and far beyond anything you could call an actual influence on my life. But still, it's not very nice, is it? What to do? I circled around him, warily. Jedi Knight II, Jedi Outcast, does one thing very, very well, and that's lightsabers. In fact, it's probably more accurate to say George Lucas et al. Did lightsabers very well in the Star Wars films, and Outcast does a good job of recalling the memory of those flashing contests. The emulation is near perfect, from the initial hiss as light slowly rises from the handle, to the sweeping motion-blurred visuals and the threatening pitch-shifting hum. Throughout the game, you can choose which perspective to view the action from. The game defaults to first-person for projectile weapons, but drawing your lightsaber switches to third-person arse cam, and this is by far the best configuration. Leave it alone. Third-person allows you to fully appreciate the acrobatics of the saber-fighting animations. You can swing away in one of three styles: fast, medium, and heavy, all of which allow you wrestle mouse movement and direction key presses to produce jaw-dropping combinations of slashes, chops, and stabs that risk you forgetting any question of your actual opponent as you stare in disbelief and whisper, "Did I just do that?"
So I'll pause it there. It's really interesting. Again, this new games journalism technique of obviously going through some of the hoops that a games journalist has to do in terms of discussing the mechanics of the game. In this case, he's talking specifically about the effectiveness of the lightsaber and how this game is appealing because it gets that lightsaber dueling really well. And so the typical games review would kind of mention that, talk about how the mechanics work, how the controller is able to replicate it, and leave it at that. What's fascinating here with this new games journalism piece by Shanahan is that it starts with the racial slur that he's taunted with at this as he's about to enter combat. So we have this moment of a kind of, inciting incident, if you wanted to turn this into a story, right? What is it about this doing this game that Shanahan looked back on and thought that changed everything at that point? And it was the racial taunt he received. That was the inciting incident, after which the game meant something different to him. And his actions and the kind of, Act 2 and 3 structure, which are coming up in the audiobook that we'll hear, are very much a kind of, to tease it a bit, a kind of hero's journey, hero's quest, as he attempts to place within an actual real experience of dealing with a toxic gamer that he's battling against, within still coded Star Wars language of, does good champion over evil in cases like this. So there's a really nice narrative style use of storytelling technique to engage readers here beyond just listening to a review. So let's return now to Shanahan's review of Jedi Outcast.
Oh, he types. Problem. Opponent, as you stare in disbelief and whisper, "Did I just do that?" Bow, he types. Problem. For all the excellent swordplay animation, Raven seems to have omitted any of the more mundane actions you could imagine your avatar performing. There is no bow button. What my socially belligerent friend is being so insistent about is something else, and that's a form of physical expression that grew out of the enthusiasm of some of the more ardent Star Wars fans who play JK2 online. Some people take their fiction very seriously, and wannabe Jedi Knights are among the most serious. The faithful, in order to be more true to the Jedi code of honor, crouch before each other and duck their heads down as a mark of respect before entering into battle. Some people think that's silly. I thought it was silly the first time I saw it. Then I saw everybody was doing it, and then I felt silly not doing it. It's strange how much weight the actions of your peers can bring to bear on you, even when your social medium is only a bunch of really fast math on a German server.
It's a wonderful point there that Shanahan's making in terms of the subjective personal experience of doing an MMO game and the formal and informal rules which emerge. So that kind of emergent gameplay that he's referring to there, where there's no bow function in the game mechanics that the game designers set up, right? It lacks, as Shanahan's pointing out, these social pleasantries. You're not given complex ways of greeting, of formally recognizing the other, of, in this case, bowing. Yet there is a way in which, you can kind of ham-fistedly reverse engineer or retroactively emergent gameplay style or appropriate what the moves you have are and do a form of bowing. And of course, what's really fun there is that you have this wonderful kind of storytelling experience there that people who play this game, some of them are kind of role-playing as Jedi Knights. And Jedi Knights are good guys. And part of the representation and the performance of being a Jedi in this game, for some, began to be this bowing technique. Before you're about to do your duel, you do a bow. While the game doesn't require you to do it, the game designers didn't intend you to bow, people playing the game got into it as a way to reference the storytelling they're doing, the immersiveness they're engaging with or wanting to engage with in the Jedi Outcast game from 2004, that they're bowing. So as Shanahan's talking about it, at first he thought, it seems a bit dorky to do. You don't need to do it. But everyone else was doing it, so it seemed weird not to do it, in fact. So here he is, again, to return to the story that set at the start. So the guy's given him a racial taunt, and then he's said to Shanahan's character to bow again. So the crisis, the dilemma he's at here with his antagonist is what to do next, right? This toxic gamer is requiring the bow mechanic after offending him. So let's listen to how Shanahan unpacks that experience in his review.
I'm currently in heavy style. This affords me the most damaging attacks at the expense of much slower swings. When you're not attacking, it also provides the best defense. Parrying is handled automatically. The best defense is wise while I'm facing off with this wanker. We've been engaged in our duel for 2 or 3 minutes, and neither one of us has come close enough to hit each other yet. This is a period of sizing up. Sometimes rash, headlong attacks can be exploited by a player of a reasonable skill level, and you'll find yourself ghosting and waiting for another turn before you know what hit you. If you've never played a particular opponent before, it pays to feel him out a bit. First, though, there are the formalities. I crouch and duck my head in a bow. Vulnerable. Stupid? Yeah. But you know what? I entered into it willingly, and why is a very interesting question. I'm a big boy now, and I don't want to be a Jedi Knight when I grow up. The Star Wars films are great, but they're also just that, films. A form of entertainment to be enjoyed during breaks from my very real and financially challenging life. Mortgage, 2 cats, a broken gutter, and a car that needs some attention. Cheers. So I didn't bow because I wanted to role-play as a Jedi. It was an act of defiance. Dueling is not new. Any multiplayer game can leave you with one opponent on either side, and I've played that scenario out in many games. The difference with lightsaber dueling, Outcast style, is that it's so very personal. These aren't detached sniping matches across the width of a map, or rocket-spamming blast fests to see who can respawn the least. JK2 duel is winner stays on, and you can be floating around for anything up to half an hour on a busy server waiting for a game. This makes your game life actually worth something, and it makes it worth fighting for. Into this potent mix, you can toss in the fact that while you're a ghosting spectator, you have time to chat and actually get to know the people you're playing, even on that usually most impersonal of beasts, the public server. During actual fights, play can swing from bouts of thrust, slash, and parry to more distant and wary sizing up in search of an opening that will allow you to land a sucker hit before your opponent can counter. There's time to talk and taunt. But perhaps most personal of all is the close proximity you have to come to damage your opponent. I'm an avoidant player at the best of times, but JK2 lightsaber duels don't allow you to hit and fade from range. You have to be right in there, trying to give the other guy a laser enema if you're going to avoid watching the show for another 6 games. So, I bowed. Not because I was naive enough to think he'd give any significance to the gesture. Not because he was commanding me to from his pillar of arrogance. I bowed despite his taunts. For all his goading, I did the right thing to show him I wasn't going to come and meet him down on his level. Blammo. Son of a bitch! Jesus, all my shields and 40 health are lost from one big heavy stance overhead chop before he spins away, back to the other side of the map. LOL, nigger. He goes into a blender.
We'll pause it there. So, again, it's delightfully combining this personal narrative. So here's Shanahan's review moving more into a type of deeply personal, emotional, and in a way psychological reaction he's having during specific moments in the game. In that moment, that initial routine, ritual of bowing, that he is then unpacking. Why did he bow? He's asking. Knowing that he's playing against a toxic gamer who's not going to abide by these informal rules, and indeed doesn't. He gets a sucker punch as a result of doing the right thing, as Shanahan refers to it as, you know, not going down to the baser level of his opponent and doing it because it's the right thing to do. And so this wonderful, though, provocative language that's there, right? The use of the racial slurs, the provocative language, which are evoking these strong reactions from Shanahan. And within that, I guess, these thoughts of where the power lies in the game, who controls what you're doing in the game. In this way, it's interesting to hear Shanahan's kind of defense of still abiding by the good guy rules and feeling empowered through that, even though in this Act 1, as we'd know almost as a hero's doing, you're being beaten down. As we've just heard there, he's been beaten down now because of the bow that has left himself exposed in the game, the Jedi Outcast game, and he's received a lightsaber slash which has removed his shields, has dealt enormous damage, and he's almost out of the game now before he's even started, because this toxic gamer is not playing by the proper informal rules, but is being provocative. So there's these interesting moments where the review's going a little beyond the game itself, commenting on broader, cultural and social issues. How do you do the right thing when you're confronted by someone who's getting away with doing the wrong thing at your detriment? So let's return now to Shanahan's review of the 2004 game Jedi Outcast.
Heavy stance overhead chop before he spins away, back to the other side of the map. LOL, nigger. He goes into a blender. Every style has a selection of special moves that can be activated by combination key presses. These are set pieces taken from notable moments of the films. Unfortunately, because JK2 is based on the Quake 3 engine, the macro scripting of that seminal of all first-person shooters is easily migrated across. This means that all skill or effort can be eliminated from the execution of these moves by a few simple scripts that can be readily downloaded and bound to a key. A blender is the heavy stance backsweep move, or several rather, chained together, causing the model to spin unrealistically, like a top. It's fatal if you get too near it, but very difficult to use in an actual fight, since you're unable to do anything until the animation is finished. It's a shame that exploits like this would eventually lead to the ultimate downfall of the multiplayer game. He's showboating. He's demonstrating how 1337 he is. Are you really black, nigger? He types. Why? I replied. Because it matters, he says. I ignore that, edge closer by a circuitous route. I don't want to get caught out by one of his lame keybinds. I switch down to medium stance, my favorite, and the best balance between speed and damage. I know I hurt you by the things I say, he says. I hit T to talk, and the chat icon appears above my head, but I hesitate. I want to say something, but with the little underscore blinking away, my fingers stop over the keys. Say what? No, you don't. No, you aren't. How can you when your insults are meaningless? Fuck you, arsehole. And slash. Bastard. In chat mode, you're powerless, like most other games.
So again, this moment of provocative language being used by the troller, by the toxic gamer, trying to deliberately troll and pull out a strong reaction and provoke actions that again come to these themes of power and control, right? That the toxic gamer was in chat, further provoking Shanahan by saying, I know the things I'm saying are hurting you. Shanahan's character then, or Shanahan in the game, as he's dueling, brings up the chat to say something, but has a moment of hesitation as he's going through, wow, do I want to feed the troll? It's not going to matter. But within that moment, of course, the mechanism here, what's really interesting about Shanahan's review is going back and forth between the personal narrative, dealing with this provocative language, the broader cultural and social issues that are there, with the game mechanics, right? That once you're in chat, your character's defenseless. And indeed is struck again by a toxic gamer in a dastardly way. You know, if we're thinking of villainous actions, so far this gamer has completely failed to abide by informal rules, right, as to what a proper duel is meant to be. So again, let's have a look how this personal narrative and, kind of challenging this traditional game journalism style, and instead looking at a kind of deeper implication of the gaming experience as Shanahan's unpacking develops further.
It's a meaningless, fuck you arsehole, and slash, bastard. In chat mode, you're powerless, like most other games. Your typing fingers can't do much about an assault by a conscienceless type killer. In all my years of Twitch gaming, my fingers have never moved so fast across the keyboard, escaping the trap of chat mode to rally my defenses against his lightning-fast slashes. Almost too late, I put distance between us. Almost too late, but not quite. 5 health points remain, and I know I haven't even hit him yet. 5 health means you're nearly dead. A brush from the tip of a saber held idly will remove 5 health points from you and take you out of the game. Shit. It's really, really unfair. I mean, all right, I've asked for it, haven't I? I was aware from the outset what kind of player I was facing, and still I insisted on performing the ritual courtesies, and still I fell for the oldest trick in the book, cut to ribbons, while I answered a pointless taunt. I've only myself to blame. For the most part, JK2 multiplayer isn't like that. Mostly, JK2 players are like players everywhere. They just want to have a blast and enjoy the competition. They'll show each other a degree of respect that is absent from most other multiplayer games, and they express that respect in a variety of ways, from the odd little emergent bow, to ad hoc lessons from complete strangers, to clans adopting the Padawan-master relationship outlined in the films. Most of the players are good guys. This is why it was unfair. The game allows bad behavior, and this is a good thing. It means that by avoiding bad behavior, you can demonstrate how good you are. Virtuous. A lack of virtue is unfairness in the unofficial rules of the game, but the only answer you have is to fight back. You too can be unfair, but some people don't like to play that way. They make a choice. This
Again, a wonderful emergent narrative, emergent gaming experience that Shanahan's referring to here. This moment where the gamers themselves decide what the weight and importance is of various mechanics they're using. You know, the game designers may have had the desire to make a good battle game and given it some trappings of what it means to be a Jedi, but to actually then flesh that out in a satisfyingly immersive way requires the gamer to be the last, producer in that assembly line of the video game. Right? You have to make the conscious choice to then understand some informal rules and how to then inhabit the good guy in Jedi Outcast. Because there is ways of breaking the game. There is ways of cheating the game. And it's your choice to not do that, which defines you in an immersive way as then emergently game-playing a Jedi, right? The good guy character, knowing you're doing the things that should be done the way it should be done because it's morally and ethically right. It shows respect, courtesy, engagement. It's not deceptive. It's not aggressively provocative as the opponent here is doing. And all that is that emergent gameplay thing, right? The fact that a video game finally only is experienced when you're gaming it, when you're actually playing it, as opposed to reading a book or watching a movie. I mean, there's certainly an imaginative engagement, a creative engagement in those actions, but broadly speaking, you could define those more passively than a video game, where the video game simply won't proceed any further if you stop playing it. It will just stop, right? You have to engage and choose something with your controller to get the game to move forward somewhat. So here we have this moment, and let's listen as this final act comes about. Shanahan's character has done everything right. He's reflected on the kind of, what it means beyond the game to be playing this game, right? What the reactions he's felt towards this toxic gamer have meant. And let's see how it all ends up.
Makes his choice. This one is a bad guy, and he isn't messing about anymore. I guess he's run out of tricks, or perhaps he's done a few quick mental calculations and realized that I'm probably on the ropes, because he starts spamming from the heavy starts finishing move, informally termed death from above. This begins with a long flat leap and ends with an overhead chop. Get caught under it and it's fatal, no matter how many shield or health points you have left. Which is a mistake on his part. It's total overkill, even though he doesn't know I only have 5 health points left. I happen to know that the very end of death from above leaves you very vulnerable indeed. He has underestimated me. And who can blame him? I've hardly been the epitome of laser swordsmanship thus far. I'll fix that impression just now. A quick swap down to fast style and a crouch forward attack puts me into a lunge, catching him with an uppercut. It's by no means fatal, but I rock his world there for a moment. He thought he was dominating, and now he's lost a whole lot of health, and he wasn't ready for that. He actually reels. There's always scope for projecting a little extra personification onto a computer-generated character, but I swear to God he has shock on his face. Entirely too rash for my current health level, I'll go into a little whirlwind of fast-style slashes and probably ding him a little more in the process as he beats a hasty retreat. No chatting now, no more insults. Collision detection in JK2 is a little flaky. Sometimes hits do far more damage than you might have thought. I can hope. He comes at me, and we have at it. The lightsabers hiss and fizz when they come into contact with each other. I roll and dodge and parry for all I'm worth. 5 health only, nearly dead. A little something personal about myself. I don't sweat. Never have. Not under normal, sit-at-the-computer circumstances, anyway. Obviously, physical exertion makes me sweat, running, jumping, swimming, etc., but not just sitting in a chair. We spin around each other, bouncing off the furniture of the map. My concentration is absolutely intense, and never before have I tried so hard to be the mouse. I feel a trickle of sweat run down from under my right armpit. You see what this has become? It's not just a trivial game to be played in an idle moment, but a genuine battle of good versus evil. It has nothing to do with Star Wars or Jedi Knights or any other fluff that surrounds the game's mechanics. I played by the rules and he didn't. That makes me the good guy and him the baddie. But this is real, in the sense that there's no telling who's going to win out here. There's no script or plot to determine the eventual triumph of the good guy. That's me, 5 health. There's no natural order of a fictional universe or any question of an apocryphal ultimate balance. There's just me and him, light and dark, in a genuine contest between the two. And there it is. I don't even know what. Some chance slash or poke in all of the rolling and jumping around, and his lifeless avatar, with all his racist stabs and underhand duplicity, goes tumbling to the floor, vanquished by the guy who, even in the face of all of that, played by the rules. Only 1 health point remains, but I win. I'm a fucking hero. A real one. A beep and a server message. Wanker has disconnected. I can only dream of the howls of anguish so far away. My next opponent spawns. and bows. A chat icon appears. Awesome, he types.
So that's Ian Always Black Shanahan's review of Jedi Outcast from 2004 that originally appeared in PC Gamer UK. And it's a wonderful ending there because it does highlight the fact you're not watching a movie or listening to an audiobook or reading a book when you're playing a video game. You know, he's saying, you know, I'm the good guy here. I did everything right. But this is real in terms of it's not necessarily going to conform to the third act structure of a Hollywood film. The good guy can lose, right? And the toxic gamer can win, and often possibly does. However, the sense of kind of storytelling technique, the narrative style, pulls off so well at the end with those stakes, and also that kind of introspection of what it means to play a video game that's different than reading a book or watching a movie. That you know, it could go any way, and you've had to make choices leading up to that point as to what type of gamer you are in this space. Are you a good guy or a bad guy in terms of are you abusing the rules, cheating, or are you actually playing the game in a way that makes you feel good and recognizing a level playing field? So it's a wonderful little piece, I think, that really does talk across a whole level of aspects of what it means to play games. And it's one of these genres, again, it's one of these examples within new games journalism, which is so interesting to revisit today. And it still holds up, I think, as well as it did back in 2004. That experience of multiplayer gaming is still with us now more than ever. And yeah, I do feel like a work like this is still incredibly timely and relevant and still reflective of today's gaming experience, maybe even more so. So thanks for listening this week to Media Mothership. This has been Dr. Craig for another week. Show notes are going to be available on the episode description via YouTube and Twitch or your podcast provider of choice when I eventually get around to uploading it. Next week, we're going to be looking at Godzilla. It's his anniversary. And we're going to deep dive with a scholar here at the University of Tasmania that's been having many, many interesting thoughts about Godzilla. And I'll also bring in some of my research findings from my previous published work on Godzilla, mainly media tourism Godzilla work I'd done in Japan, looking at people going to Japan because they were huge Godzilla fans and their experience of that pilgrimage. So you can listen to previous episodes of Media Mothership on YouTube, Twitch, and at edgeradio.org.au, or again, your podcast provider of choice. Find out more about Media Mothership on Facebook and Instagram, and keep listening, of course, to Edge Radio. Coming up next, some great tunes, and then at 6 o'clock, we've got Adrian. Show You Can't Sit Down.